Want-away players, a manager under pressure, and a 3-0 defeat that's left them 5 points behind their rivals in the title race. We ask if it's time to ignore all of that and start backing Bayern Munich in the Bundesliga outright. That's followed by another surprise quiz and a couple of tips from our resident expert after some technically profitable picks last week. All that and more on today's show. Hello and welcome to the Betting Expert Football Podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Jenkins, joined as ever by Betting Expert's football editor, Mr. Sam Ingram. How are you doing, Sam?
Hello, Dan. Yep, all good, thanks. How are you?
Fantastic. As I said in the intro, it was a marginally profitable week for you last time. Just to remind people, you had over 2.75 goals in both Luton versus Sheffield United and Wolves versus Brentford in the Premier League. Comfortable win in the former, but Wolves and Brentford couldn't quite take us over, could they?
Yeah, what are we? Does that make us 0.01?
Yes, technically profitable.
Wow, okay. You take that all day long,
huge,
to be honest.
yeah.
Like if we do that all season, we'll end it like about half a unit up come the Euros. So it's not all bad. But no, yeah, really unlucky in the Wolves Brentford game. Saw Craig Dawson had a go rightly disallowed, to be fair. They hit the woodwork twice. So unlucky not to get a third goal there. And over in Luton v Sheffield, like I got it right, but I got it kind of the wrong way around. I thought it would be Luton 3-4-1, to be honest, but massive result for Sheffield United. And in terms of the bets, really quite unlucky. But in terms of like the reasoning behind them, I think we were kind of on the right track. So not too bad.
Yeah, goals didn't come from the team you expected in that Luton match, I think, was how it turned out. So let's kick things off with a trip to Germany and Bayer Leverkusen's 3-0 win over Bayern Munich last Saturday. Potentially a massive moment in the title race. It leaves Xabi Alonso's side 5 points clear of Bayern, who are aiming to win their 12th consecutive Bundesliga title. It was a mammoth result, Sam. How did you see the match and where did it sit with your expectations?
Yeah, it was huge in terms of the Bundesliga title race, but it was a continuation of what Bayer Leverkusen have been doing all season in terms of the result. Everyone expected it to be probably much closer as a contest, but we're 21 games in now, and Xabi Alonso's Leverkusen are yet to lose a match in the Bundesliga, which is pretty phenomenal. The game itself, we saw 39% possession to Bayern 61 on Saturday, and it felt like that at times. Leverkusen were comfortable for Bayern Munich to have the ball and seemingly control proceedings. I say control very loosely because they didn't control the game. Leverkusen orchestrated play without the ball. They pressed in a targeted fashion and they allowed Bayern to have possession in their own half. When they didn't threaten, and they pressed when they did threaten, and they did so fantastically. It was a really good watch, to be honest. Alonso had them drilled in a way where they accepted the facade of Bayern's stranglehold on the stats and time on the ball, and continued to deliver the better quality of chances throughout the 90 minutes. Tuchel lined up, interestingly, in a back five with two wing backs, and effectively matched Leverkusen's formation away from home against a team that knows how to play this system and has been easing past pretty much every opponent in doing so. I thought that was interesting because to me that felt like somewhat of a admission of sorts maybe from Tuchel, that the only way they could approach playing Leverkusen was to rip up the script, go man for man. And with hindsight now, obviously Tuchel knows a few more things than I do, but if that feels really quite daft. But at the time, maybe you could see what he was trying to do. But as we saw, Leverkusen had a field day, and man for man, they caused havoc on either wing through the middle. They were effective in transitions. It felt like they run that little bit harder. It felt like they were first at every ball when there was a duel in midfield. And now I'm a big advocate for expected goal stats. You'll probably hear me bang on about them all the time. But to me, this felt like it could have been 4-0 Leverkusen after half an hour. Like, how many times did, excuse me, how many times did we see Leverkusen forcing that Bayern backline backwards, sprinting towards their own goal? I don't think there's a stat for that, but they were all over the shop, like at 6s and 7s again and again. And the 90 minutes finished 1.32 XG to Leverkusen and 0.56 to Bayern Munich. And there were instances where Bayern Munich defenders cleared their lines. From the top of my head, Adli was through on goal just before half-time. Upamecano got a toe to it. They hit the bar direct from a corner. Frimpong hit the post. So there's all these kind of instances that really, if you're looking at the underlying statistics in this game, I would just forget about it, because Leverkusen could have genuinely won this game 5 or 6-0. They were so good.
Yeah, definitely. I saw there was an interesting interview ESPN did with Xabi Alonso after the match. He said, and I quote, "We have controlled well to find the right moment, when to press, when to wait, who could have the ball and who could not have the ball," end quote. And I mean, looking at the stats, I think it's pretty clear who Leverkusen let have the ball for Bayern and who they didn't. If you just compare the two Englishmen in that Bayern starting lineup, the player in the game with the most touches was Eric Dyer by far. He had about 50% more touches than any other player on the pitch with 129. Kim Min-jae was second with 89. Harry Kane played 90 minutes and had 18 touches of the ball. Quite a simplistic stat, I think, but it does really evidence Alonso's approach to this game. They just let Bayern have the ball where they wanted them to have it, didn't they?
Yeah, exactly that. And Eric Dyer, I'm sure they were absolutely fine with him sitting on the ball, passing it left and right, because what is he really going to affect from there? But as soon as they looked to break the lines in midfield, there was just traps all over the pitch. So whenever a Bayern Munich player received it back to go, they instantly pounced on, and from there it was man v man. Bayern's back line were turned around, and like I said, they could have scored 5 or 6. It was really impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving this back to the title odds and the outright title odds, you said last week that you were backing Manchester City in December when things were looking a bit grim for them in the Premier League title odds. City have won 5 of the last 6 Premier League titles, of course, while over in Germany, Bayern have dominated things. They've won it every year for the past 11 years. I mean, despite the 5-point gap, Bayern just cannot be written off as far as I'm concerned. So is it time, you think, to start backing Bayern against a club that once had a rather unwanted reputation for always finishing second back in the Leverkusen days?
Yeah, it's a really good question. This is, to be fair, this is exactly the time that I would pull the trigger on an outright bet like this. If I fancy like an out of favour horse, I think it's really easy to forget just how long a season is and how many games clubs have to be able to turn their like current predicaments around, and how difficult it is to see a team maybe like Bayer Leverkusen continue with this exact same form that we see in front of our eyes right now and kind of harness that until the end of the season. But in terms of the title race in Germany, after what I saw on Saturday, the injury list in Munich, I'm not sure this is a bet I would be thrilled with taking. They're currently without Coman, I think, for about 2 months. Serge Gnabry, Alphonso Davies, Konrad Lehmer, to name a few. They were desperate for a defensive midfielder in the summer, and João Palhinha didn't get him, obviously. This is a little bit different to the supposed City slump we saw back at the end of 2003. I think, yes, they weren't winning game after game in a ruthless manner as usual, but the squad depth they possess means that injuries won't always rock them unless they get Rodri, Haaland and De Bruyne out, which they did. But for that to happen, more than once in a season, I highly doubt it. So, and also in the Premier League, in the 3-horse race, which you probably say it is now, there's not really like an unbeaten front runner playing how Leverkusen are to put you off back in City at odds against prices. But Bayern right now 2.62, Leverkusen I think they're about 1.50. If you think it's going to be much tighter than the odds suggest, then now would probably be the time to enter, or maybe leave it a weekend. I think Leverkusen have Heidenheim at home. So if you're going to back Bayern, maybe leave it a weekend if you think Leverkusen are going to turn them over, and then maybe have a look at the prices then. But in my opinion, yeah, the only team that can really stop Leverkusen winning the league is Leverkusen. As the pressure mounts nearer the business end of the season for this group of players who's not been there too many times or any times at all for a large percentage of them, we'll really see what kind of they're made of. But for me, I'll probably leave it, I think.
Yeah, I mean, with comparing it to Manchester City, it almost feels a bit controlled. It feels a bit intentional with Manchester City, the way they sort of drop off in November, December. We've seen it so many times in the past few years. They drop off in the winter, and then January, February, they find another couple of forwards who just start banging in the goals and take them there. For the record, Betsy gives Bayer Leverkusen a 69% chance of winning the Bundesliga for this season, currently projected to come in at 84 points, with Bayern Munich coming in just shy of 81. And of course, we've been here before in the Bundesliga with Borussia Dortmund last season, with RB Leipzig in recent years. And I mean, it's a difficult ask. It's a big ask to overcome Bayern Munich. But as Sam says, maybe leave it a couple of weeks and see where things are, see where things lie. But yeah, as you say, Sam, I do agree. The only team that can really stop Leverkusen at the moment are Leverkusen. But yeah, we'll see. It was yet another string in the bow for Xabi Alonso as well, Leverkusen manager. All the talk now is of him replacing Jurgen Klopp at Liverpool. Does this result show his credentials for that role?
Absolutely, yeah, it does. It was, like I said earlier, it was a contest which I think everyone assumed would be much closer. I think if you're watching that and you are the powers that be in Liverpool, you've got to just throw everything you can at Xabi Alonso and get him in. Like, approach his agent now, maybe get something locked in. It feels like, on the face of things, it feels like it's a little bit too soon for the Liverpool job in terms of like length of his managerial career and experience that he's probably taken from it. But at the same time, weirdly, it feels like he's absolutely ready for the opportunity due to his, like, we saw it on Saturday, like his tactical acumen, man management, and like overall nous in terms of like involvement in recruitment over in Germany, because they've built a squad there. Like, I think he took over and they were second from bottom. I can't remember how many points they had. But to go from that in the space of a year and a little bit to really pushing Bayern Munich and looking like they're going to end up lifting the Bundesliga. It's extraordinary. And I think if you're Liverpool, if you're looking at the landscape of managers available, I think he's just a standout candidate. I think you've got to really go for it.
Yeah. I mean, there are some stylistic differences, aren't there? I know Jamie Carragher spoke about this on Monday Night Football over on Sky Sports, but there is a big difference between Leverkusen 23-24 and Liverpool 23-24. Leverkusen play the most short passes in Europe as a team. They see almost 9% more of the ball possession per game, whereas Liverpool have been relying a lot on the long passes from the centre-backs and from Trent Alexander-Arnold, often just pinging those balls out to Mo Salah. He dribbles past one or two and gets a shot off because he's Mo Salah. Not a like-for-like replacement. You're not going to find the next Jurgen Klopp regardless, are you? But I think for this to work, it's either going to have to be that Alonso will change, his tactics will change, or the players will change. But I do think as a man, he's got the personality and the profile that you need to be Liverpool manager, because it's quite a unique role, isn't it? However, replacing Jurgen Klopp, it's a tough act to follow, I think. Just ask kind of David Moyes or Unai Emery at Manchester United and Arsenal, who replaced Sir Alex Ferguson and Arsene Wenger. It can be quite hard to follow these legacy managers. Do you think it would be better for Alonso in the long term if he didn't come straight after Klopp and he kind of came after the guy that came after the guy?
Maybe. I know exactly what you're saying, but equally, like, I'm sure he'd prefer to take over a Liverpool team in good shape with enviable work ethic and clearly like moldable in terms of tactical approach to the game. I think one of the key traits to being like a high level manager and a high level professional, really, in any field, is just that adaptability. And I think we've not really seen it because we don't have too much to go off in terms of his managerial career, but it feels like Xabi would probably come into Liverpool knowing the club, knowing the work into the club, and it feel like he would have that. I feared for Liverpool when I saw the Jurgen Klopp news, and I still do, to be honest. But if they get Xabi and that works from the off, that feels like it'd be pretty exciting. It's remarkable the job he's done, and looking at how he carries himself in a head coach position, I think he'd relish the opportunity, and I think he would do pretty well at Anfield.
Yeah, definitely. So let's close things off there, and after the break, we'll come back with some of Sam's tips for the week and the surprise quiz. Now, before we get to Sam's tips for the weekend, I do have another surprise quiz question tucked up my sleeve. Sam, it was a pretty decent display from you last week in the expected points versus Betsy projections. Were you happy with the 1 out of 3?
No, I wasn't, to be honest, no. I mean, ideally, you want to be getting at least 2, don't you? But
yeah.
I thought it was tough.
Well,
I'll probably find this one as tough as well.
This one isn't as betting focused, so more kind of football trivia knowledge. So, I mean, we'll see how it goes. But yeah, slightly different direction for it. We've already discussed Xabi Alonso, who, of course, enjoyed a fine playing career as a central midfielder for the Spanish national team and for some top European clubs. Now, if he were to join Liverpool tomorrow, he would be the 7th Premier League manager who played the majority of their playing career, as a midfielder. My question for you, Sam, is can you name the other 6?
That have taken Premier League positions?
No, that have midfielders, just spend their careers as midfielders, yeah. I'm accepting left midfield, right midfield, kind of like anything other than a striker and a defender and a goalkeeper.
Okay. So, Frank Lampard.
He is not a Premier League manager.
Oh, right now?
Right now, yes.
Right now, okay. Gary
O'Neill, yes. Played it in the Premier League and the Championship with Portsmouth, West Ham and Middlesbrough. It's a good player, O'Neill.
He was, yeah. Scored some good goals. I'm a bit stumped there. I was going to say, I think Klopp was a defender. I'll leave him out.
He was a defender. He was a striker and a defender. He went down the Christopher Samba route. Yeah.
Did he play up top, did he?
Yeah, he used to play up front.
Right. This is bad news.
Couple of big ones in there, Sam. Arteta. Yes, Mikel Arteta obviously played for Arsenal as well. Club captain. Also spent time with Everton, Rangers and PSG.
Pochettino.
Mauricio Pochettino was a centre-back.
Was he centre-back? Did he not play like CDM?
Nope.
Oh,
Centre-back.
gonna have to look at that after.
You can look it up. Still missing a big one.
Are we?
Yeah. European Cup winner.
Oh my God.
Played for one of the greatest teams in club football history.
Plymouth Argyle. I'm mindful this is like a terrible listen, but give me a sec.
Just dead air for 10 minutes while Sam thinks.
Honestly, I can't think of anyone. This is going to annoy me so
Thrown in the towel?
Yeah, go on.
Okay, Sam, the obvious one, Pep Guardiola, centre midfielder, Barcelona, played under Johan Cruyff. Also missing Roberto De Zerbi. Attacking midfielder, used to play for Napoli. Missing Unai Emery, who was a winger, apparently. Sprinting up the wing for Real Sociedad. No.
I got that one.
And then the one I thought probably would have caught you out, that I didn't think you were going to get, was Thomas Frank.
Frank.
Didn't play. He wasn't professional. Yeah, he spent his time back in Denmark, amateur football. Okay. But yeah, centre part. A lot of defenders I mean, there's probably something in that centre-backs, defenders kind of go into management a little bit more.
Yeah, I suppose they see like the whole game in front of them, and obviously Marsh for the back, so maybe.
Yeah, and Nuno Espirito Santo was a goalkeeper, so he saw more of the game than anyone, I think. But yeah, we could have a Premier League big three of Alonso, Guardiola, and Arteta next season. Be a pretty decent midfield.
That would be interesting.
Yeah, great. Now we move on to Sam's tips for this week. And after last week's scandal of having 2 whole tips from the Premier League, Sam, you're heading back to home comforts and the Championship for your first one this week.
Yes, back to the Championship. It's going to be Swansea versus Ipswich, over 2.75 Asian goals again, just like last week, at 1.97. So Luke Williams' Swansea City side, they kicked things off with their first win at the weekend. The Swans went to Hull, outfought Hull in terms of both expected goals, just slightly, and also shots at goal. Hull City aren't really firing on all cylinders right now, but regardless, it was a good showing from Swansea, who were 4 Championship games without a win, following Williams' arrival from Notts County. So they lined up in a 4-2-3-1, flat back 4. Players playing in their natural positions, Kundo up top, who nicked a goal rather than just in behind. They had Plaqueta, Patterson and Ronald in the supporting act, and Jerry Yates and Charlie Patino in the mix too. So looking at this fixture, before last night's 4-0 loss to Leeds, I thought that this was a setup that really had the makings of a side that could take the game to Ipswich under Luke Williams in front of a home crowd. But there is naturally doubt in my mind now after that performance last night. They couldn't really match Leeds' intensity, and they were second best all over the park, really. Yeah,
it was a particularly poor performance from my local team last night. They played a pretty high defensive line against Leeds' pacey forwards, and I don't think there was much pressure in midfield. Leeds could just take the time, pick the passes through, and they were in behind half a dozen times. So, I mean, are Swansea's defensive issues coming into your thinking for this bet?
Yeah, of course. We should be mindful that although they clearly weren't good enough last night, that this is a Leeds side, which is Premier League quality, really. They took Swansea's best player off them in the summer, Joe Perreault, and he's largely been warming the bench over the last month, so that shows the difference between the two sides at the moment. Ipswich aren't a million miles away from Leeds, to be honest, but there's still a gulf there as well in terms of like financial muscle and players available and squad depth, etc. In terms of Swansea's defensive fragilities, yes, it's a large part of the thinking behind the bet. And they take on a Ipswich Town side that has managed just 1 win in 9 after a flying start to the Championship season. It's seen them leapfrogged by Southampton and Leeds United, who are always going to pounce on any Ipswich wobble, with the quality and consistency shown from those two recently relegated Premier League outfits. If you look at Ipswich's schedule, though, it's been a really tough run since taking on bitter rivals Norwich in mid-December. Ipswich have come out against the Canaries, Leeds, Leicester twice, who they drew with on both occasions, Sunderland, who they beat at home, a reinvigorated Preston side, and West Brom on the weekend. So a pretty difficult schedule for them. The reason I mention this is because now it gets much easier for McKenna's Ipswich, Millwall, Swansea, Rotherham, Birmingham, Argyle. All teams looking over their shoulders and trying not to get sucked into the relegation conversation. Going into Millwall and beyond. So Ipswich play Millwall tonight after recording, so we're not too sure how they get on just yet. But going into Millwall, I expect them to start picking up more points than they have been. It should be noted that I don't really think Ipswich have played considerably worse in the last 2 months than beforehand. Maybe not quite at the same level. They started the Championship campaign displaying, but they've certainly not been poor, and they'll be targeting this stretch of games as something they can capitalise on, and I expect to see that in performance and results. Kieran McKenna will have been watching last night, licking his lips, I'm sure. He'll feel they can really cause a few problems here, exactly how Leeds did, and I wouldn't be surprised to see them run out comfortable winners.
Fair. I mean, for the record, Betsy has the goal line coming in at 2.79 projected, with 1.02 for Swansea, 1.77 for Ipswich. So decent margin in the game. Ipswich clearly the favourites with Betsy, but goals are a problem for the hosts. I think they've scored a grand total of 2 at home in 4 league matches since the start of the year. So we may be relying on Ipswich's forwards to get us over the line here. Is that a concern given their form? I know you said maybe performances and results have been a bit disjointed.
It is a slight concern, and to be honest, I came into this on the fence between this bet and Ipswich straight to win. I think it's 1.95, approaching even. So, yeah, that is a little bit of a concern. But if there's one thing we can take from Luke Williams' body of work at Notts County, it's that his teams will score goals. They'll create goal-scoring opportunities regardless of opposition. Maybe not Leeds United, but with that, they are susceptible at the back, which is the perfect recipe for an over 2.75 goals bet. In the last 2 home games before Leeds, under Luke Williams in the Championship, Swansea recorded 2.41 XG against Southampton, lost 3-1, recorded 15 shots. Against Plymouth Argyle, they recorded 2.77 XG from 20 shots, and they lost 1-0. So this is a team that when they click, when they're firing under Williams, we will see them create a lot of goal scoring opportunities. It may not feel like that after last night, but they will. And I really think that they will have a go here after that whole win. Also, after last night, they need a response, really. You can't be losing 4-0 at home and then come out the next game at home and not really take it to the opposition. So I think that approach against Ipswich might see them picked off here and there in transition and on the counter, just like they were against Leeds. But equally, it should encourage a steady number of goal-scoring opportunities in the game at either end. And we just need either side to take at least 3 chances for a profit, and if Ipswich do run away with proceedings, we've got 3-0, 3-1, 4-0 score lines, etc. on our side too. So yeah, it feels like a pretty good way into the game, but I wouldn't put anyone off Ipswich straight win as well around evens.
Over 2.75 goals in Swansea versus Ipswich comes in at 1.975 odds on Bet365. That's the first of Sam's picks. The second half of your double this week, Sam, looks at Liverpool's chances as they take on Brentford on Saturday afternoon in the early kickoff.
Yes, so I'm looking at Liverpool to win and both teams to score. It's at 2.80 on Bet365. Liverpool have both scored and conceded in 7 of their away league games against Brentford. They lost 3-1 last season, but they've never lost in consecutive visits versus Brentford. Just looking at Liverpool's last few games, we've got score lines of 3-1, 3-1, 4-1 and 5-2 since Jurgen Klopp's decision to leave Liverpool went public. It's hard to decipher whether that's exactly why we're seeing such goal-laden matches over the last few weeks, is Liverpool are always good for a goal regardless, but it's an interesting kind of suggestion. Right now you'd fancy them to score against anyone, but they certainly aren't watertight at the back. At 1.60 for the win, it's really not something I'm interested in, but you can drag that right up to 2.80 with Brentford muscling their way onto the score sheet, and that makes it quite an appealing position for me, I think.
I mean, my big concern here is whether Liverpool just sweep Brentford aside. I mean, it's a Brentford team that before last weekend had lost 7 of 8 Premier League matches, and looking at Liverpool before that 3-1 loss at the Emirates last week, the Reds had only won 4 on the bounce away from home in the league. They only conceded once in that time. So why did you go for BTTS here over just going Liverpool win and over on goals?
Yeah, so we touched on it briefly last week in how Tony and Maupay is like a handy alternative for Brentford. Up top instead of Visa and Buemo and Shada or knocking about the team as well. Obviously they're out injured, but we've got quite a good strike force there to rely on. Now looking at Tony specifically, he averaged 0.57 XG per 90 last season, where he scored 18 in 33 Premier League games. In his opening 4 games following his ban, he has averaged 0.50. Obviously a really small sample size from 4 matches, but he's back in the team and he's performing at a similar level. He scored 3 goals in his 4 games, and you can see it's really lifted everyone around him too. He's got that like aura about him on the pitch where it's it's kind of evident that he fully expects himself to make something happen from nothing or pop up with the goods when it matters, and that is infectious. And we've seen it with Neil Maupay. He's now also finding form. That'll leave Everton fans scratching their heads, I'm sure. He scored one Premier League goal in 29 appearances there. Now, he couldn't make it 6 consecutive games with a goal last time out against Wolves, although he did pull the trigger 3 times and he did hit the target with each. He has, however, been involved with either 1 goal or an assist in each of his last 6 Brentford home games. So I think him and Tony up top for Brentford, they'll continue to cause a few headaches for Premier League opponents. And if they can find a goal between them here, then I think this selection is very much on the cards. Now, I also fancied Brentford +1 Asian handicap as this, for me, it's got a feeling of a game which Liverpool might make hard for themselves, hence the both teams to score pick we've gone for. Against Burnley last week, or at the weekend, although they deserved the win, the Clarets had their chances, and on another day they'd have got another couple. Kelleher saved a 1-on-1 with Anduni in the first half, and then he also saved one, I think it was Fofana in the second, and they had a rebound from that 1-on-1, which was like shanked wide. And I just think if Brentford are afforded similar in those kind of situations, they're probably going to take it. And I can't remember Company's exact quote, but he said that he doesn't think he's ever been to Liverpool and been afforded so many chances than he was at the weekend. Obviously, he's played there a number of times with City. So that was interesting, I thought. And I just think that Brentford will get chances. And with Tony, I think they may well take them. And to drag that Liverpool to win price all the way up to 2.80 just for Brentford to get a go, it feels like something I'm willing to take on, I think.
Betsy is giving Brentford 1.42 goals in this game, with Liverpool coming in at 1.97. So definitely approaching according to the data. And for Liverpool as well, potentially no Mohamed Salah. We may not really know until kickoff. I don't think they Jurgen Klopp might keep this close to his chest a little bit here. But the same goes for Trent Alexander-Arnold and Dominic Szoboszlai. I think they were missing quite a lot of creativity against Arsenal at the weekend. Is that a worry if you want to get Liverpool to win this match?
Yeah, it is a worry. Like I said, we don't have anything confirmed, but Mo Salah's been back in full Liverpool training, so hopefully he can get himself on the bench. That'll be a huge boost for Liverpool. Also, Alisson, Gomez and Bradley, I think, are potentially back as well. Now, I am a bit of a conservative bettor. Like, I'll often start with a bet in mind that I really like and then strip it down to something maybe a little more safe at a smaller price if the value is there. And I was in 2 minds with this bet. Liverpool win, both teams to score at 2.80, but I do think they're going to make it hard for themselves, as I've said. So you can also take both teams to score and over 2.5 goals instead. I think that's 1.83. So I'm kind of between selections. What do you reckon, Dan? What would you go for?
Yeah, I mean, you can get BTS and over 2.5 at about 1.8, which is probably a little bit short for me. I do quite like over 3.25, just straight up on the Asian line. I can see a lot of goals in this match. Okay. Who they come through, I'm not sure, but I think if you just go for goals, you're kind of covering your bases a little bit more. Yeah,
no, I get that. I think we'll stick with my original bet, and hopefully Liverpool can run away with it and just show their fragilities once again this weekend. That would be nice. At a pretty good price as well, to be honest.
Yeah, it's not a bad price. I mean, 2.80 for Liverpool to win and BTTS. You can get it at about 2.05 if you just go for Liverpool to win and over 2.5 goals. So if you combine the original Brentford versus Liverpool to win and BTTS at 2.80 with your earlier bet over 2.75 goals in Swansea versus Ipswich, get it as a double at 5.53. Sam, would you go double? Would you go singles? Would you go both?
I'd probably just. I'm a bit boring,
you know. When it comes, boring.
I'm really boring when it comes to betting, or in general as well, to be honest.
And in general, yeah.
I would just go singles. That's kind of how I bet. But yeah, at that double price, I wouldn't put anyone off it.
We'll leave things there, but not before a quick plug. It's it's only since working on this podcast that I realized just how important ratings and reviews are. So, I mean, if you could leave a review of the show on Spotify, it would honestly make a world of difference to our chances of being seen, especially as a brand new podcast. Only takes about 10 seconds, but it would be hugely appreciated by me and Sam. So let's wrap it up there. Thanks as ever to Mr. Sam Ingram.
Thank you.
And thank you from me. We'll be back next week.